Have you started feeling like you don't belong anymore? Not in a dramatic, rebellious way, but quietly, almost invisibly. You go through the motions, work, social obligations, daily routines, but inside, you're somewhere else entirely. You're watching from a distance, unable to invest in things that everyone else seems to care deeply about. If this resonates, if you've been wondering what's wrong with you for feeling so disconnected, take a breath. Because what you're experiencing isn't depression or cynicism or failure to adapt. Carl Jung spent decades studying people like you, people who'd awakened to something deeper and found themselves unable to remain fully engaged with society. And he discovered that this quiet departure isn't a breakdown. It's a natural consequence of becoming conscious. I'm about to share 5 truths about why awakened people are quietly leaving society behind. And if you've been feeling guilty for your growing detachment, if you've been trying to force yourself back into full participation, you may finally understand that you're not failing at life. You're simply outgrowing the life society told you to live. Let me show you exactly why this happens. The first truth about why awakened people are leaving might be the most fundamental, because once you see it, everything about your experience suddenly makes sense. Most people move through social structures without recognizing them as performances. They work, compete, achieve, display, and it feels real, meaningful, important. They're not consciously performing, they're just living. But through your awakening, through shadow work, through crisis, through whatever path brought you to consciousness, you've started seeing the performance underneath everything. You see people performing success while being internally miserable, performing happiness while being emotionally dead, performing confidence while being terrified. Jung called this living through the persona, maintaining the social mask so constantly that people forget there's a real self beneath it. Everyone's playing roles, maintaining images, performing scripts they didn't consciously choose. And here's what makes it unbearable. You're conscious of your own performance now too. You can feel when you're performing success, happiness, or confidence. You're aware of the gap between your performance and your actual internal state. Think of society like a massive theatrical production where everyone's an actor, but nobody realizes they're acting. They're all on stage, performing their roles, following scripts, hitting their marks. They think this is reality. They've forgotten they're in a play. Then you wake up mid-performance. Suddenly you realize you're on a stage, wearing a costume, speaking lines someone else wrote. You can see the sets are painted plywood. The other actors are performing too. The whole production is constructed. Now you have 2 choices. Keep acting while knowing it's a performance, or walk off stage. Most awakened people start walking off stage, quietly, without making a scene. They just can't keep performing in a play they now recognize as fiction. And the moment you step off that stage, you can't go back. The lights, the costumes, the scripts, you see them all as construction now. The other actors wonder why you're not hitting your marks anymore, why you're missing your cues, why you seem distracted. But you're watching from the wings, unable to return to unconscious performance. You see the director in the shadows, calling the shots. You see the stage crew changing scenery between acts. You see the audience watching, judging, consuming the performance. And you understand, everyone on stage thinks they're living real life, but they're all performing a script written by collective unconsciousness. The tragedy is that you can see all of this, but you can't make the other actors see it. They're too invested in their roles. The performance is their identity. Suggesting it's all theater would threaten everything they believe about themselves. So you stop trying to explain. You just quietly walk away, leaving them to their performance while you search for something more real. This is the first reason. You've seen through society's performance, and conscious performance is so exhausting that withdrawal becomes the only sustainable option. You're not failing to engage. You're refusing to perform unconsciously in a production you can now see clearly. But seeing through performance is only the beginning. This second truth reveals something even more profound about why the life everyone else wants suddenly feels empty to you. Society is organized around specific markers of success: career advancement, wealth accumulation, status symbols, social approval. Jung referred to these as collective values, standards imposed by society that have little to do with individual psychological development. Everyone's climbing the same ladder, competing for the same prizes, measuring their worth by the same external standards. But through your inner work, something shifted. You started questioning what you were actually chasing and why. You began examining whether these goals genuinely led to fulfillment or just to more chasing. And you realized most of what society calls success is just sophisticated distraction from the real work of becoming whole. The career ladder doesn't lead to meaning. The accumulation of wealth doesn't create inner peace. The achievement of status doesn't make you more yourself. So you've stopped chasing them, not dramatically. You didn't quit your job or give away all your possessions. You just stopped being motivated by the same rewards, stopped deriving satisfaction from advancement, stopped measuring your worth by external markers. And when you stop chasing what everyone else is chasing, you naturally drift to the edges of society, because society is organized entirely around collective pursuit of these goals. One man Jung worked with experienced this profoundly. A high-achieving executive who'd done deep shadow work. He returned to his career and found himself completely unmotivated. The promotions that once excited him now felt meaningless. The salary increases that once validated him now seemed irrelevant. He told Jung, "I feel like everyone's running a race I've stopped caring about. They're sprinting toward a finish line that looks meaningless to me. I can't explain why I'm not running anymore without sounding like I think I'm better than them." Jung helped him see, you've awakened to the emptiness at the heart of what society calls success. Jung described this as the crisis of meaning, when external achievements no longer provide psychological satisfaction. You're not depressed or lazy. You're no longer motivated by external rewards because you've started valuing internal development. Society has no framework for this. Jung continued, the finish line they're running toward is an illusion. Even those who reach it discover it's just another starting line for another race. But most people never question whether the race itself is worth running. You've questioned it and found it wanting. Jung called this the awakening to authentic values. When you stop accepting society's definitions of success and start defining success from your own soul's perspective. The man gradually withdrew from corporate culture, not through quitting, but through quiet disengagement. He showed up, did his work, but stopped participating in the pursuit of advancement, the competition for status, the measuring of worth through external achievement. People judged it as lack of ambition, but he wasn't lacking ambition. He was ambitious for something society doesn't recognize, the development of his soul. He was running a different race now, one toward wholeness, integration, authenticity. A race with no finish line, no spectators, no medals. Just the quiet satisfaction of becoming more himself each day. This is the second reason. You've stopped chasing what society values. And when you're not motivated by the same goals, you naturally drift away from collective pursuits organized around those goals. Now, this third lesson changes everything, because it reveals why even simple, everyday interactions have become psychologically impossible for you. Every social group, family, workplace, friend circle, community, operates on shared illusions, unspoken agreements about what's true, what matters, what's acceptable to acknowledge. Jung called these collective fantasies, shared beliefs that keep groups bonded but prevent individual consciousness. These illusions aren't malicious, they're protective. They create comfort, cohesion, belonging, but awakened people have done the work of seeing clearly. You've examined your own illusions, confronted uncomfortable truths, brought unconscious material into consciousness, and that work has made you unable to participate in collective illusions. You see the family dynamics everyone else is pretending not to see. You recognize the workplace toxicity everyone's agreeing to ignore. You perceive the community shadows everyone's collectively projecting elsewhere. Think of collective illusions like everyone agreeing to wear glasses that make everything look rosy. The glasses filter out anything uncomfortable, problematic, or challenging. Everyone sees the same rosy version of reality and bonds through this shared vision. Then you take off your glasses. Suddenly you see reality without the filter, the problems, the shadows, the uncomfortable truths everyone else's glasses are hiding. You can see clearly now. But everyone else is still wearing their rosy glasses. They're bonding through their filtered, comfortable vision. When you try to point out what you're seeing, they look at you like you're crazy. They might even attack you for disturbing their comfortable illusion. You could put the glasses back on to fit in, but once you've seen clearly, the rosy filter feels like lying. You can't unknow what you know, so you stop participating in the collective vision and drift away from groups that require the filtered view for membership. And here's the painful part. The groups don't just let you quietly disagree. Your clear sight threatens the entire illusion. If one person can see without the glasses, it suggests others might be able to as well. That possibility threatens the group's cohesion, so they either pressure you to put the glasses back on, or they push you out. Either way, you end up alone. Not because you chose isolation, but because consciousness itself is isolating when everyone around you is invested in unconsciousness. This is the third reason. You can't participate in collective illusions anymore. Groups require shared blindness, and you're no longer blind. So you naturally drift away from groups that require you to pretend not to see. If you're recognizing yourself in these truths, if you can't perform unconsciously, if societal success feels hollow, if you can't maintain collective illusions, please hear this. Your withdrawal isn't depression or cynicism. It's consciousness refusing to participate in unconscious systems. Jung never pathologized this withdrawal. He saw it as a natural stage of individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are rather than who society needs you to be. Before we explore the final two reasons, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises designed to help you find your way within. Click below to get True Self-Discovery. Let's continue. Here's where it gets profound, because this fourth truth exposes what most people completely misunderstand about your withdrawal. Here's what most people don't understand about your withdrawal. You're not leaving because you hate society or judge others. You're leaving because you're being called toward inner work that requires your full attention and energy. Jung called this the call to individuation, an inner imperative that reorganizes your life around psychological wholeness rather than social conformity. Jung defined individuation as the process of becoming your true self, of integrating your shadow, of bringing your unconscious into consciousness, of living from your authentic center rather than your social masks. This work isn't optional for awakened people. It's a calling that reorganizes your entire life around a different center. Not external achievement, but internal integration. Not social success, but psychological wholeness. And this work requires solitude, silence, space. It requires hours that used to be filled with social obligations, energy that used to go toward maintaining your place in society, attention that used to be scattered across collective pursuits. One man Jung worked with was a teacher who, after a profound psychological crisis, found himself unable to engage with his profession the way he had before. The crisis had opened doorways to his unconscious that demanded attention. He'd go through his workday, teach his classes, interact with colleagues, but internally he was somewhere else, processing material from his dreams, integrating insights from his shadow work, sitting with emotions finally surfacing after years of repression. He told Jung, "I feel like there's this underground river inside me that I've finally found the entrance to. But to explore this river, I have to leave the surface world behind for periods of time. I can't be fully present to society and fully present to this inner work simultaneously." Jung confirmed, individuation is the work of turning inward to discover who you actually are beneath all social conditioning. Jung referred to this as the descent into the unconscious, a necessary journey away from collective life. This work requires withdrawal from collective life, not permanently, but substantially. You're not leaving society out of hatred. You're being called to something deeper that society cannot comprehend or support. Most people experience their lives on the surface, bouncing from task to task, relationship to relationship, achievement to achievement. They never dive deep enough to discover what's beneath, but you've been pulled beneath the surface. You've discovered there's an entire world down there. Your unconscious, your shadow, your unlived life, your authentic self. Once you've seen that world, the surface feels shallow. You can't go back to living only on the surface. The man gradually reduced his external commitments to create space for inner work. People saw this as him checking out of life, but he was checking in to his actual life, his soul's life, the life beneath the social performance. He was finally living from the inside out rather than the outside in. This is the fourth reason. You're being called toward inner work that demands your withdrawal. You're not abandoning society. You're answering a deeper calling that requires you to temporarily leave collective life behind to discover individual life within. And now, this final truth might be the most liberating of all, because it reveals that your departure isn't a problem to fix. It's natural growth that can't be stopped. Here's the truth most people never realize. Society is designed for a specific level of consciousness. It's built to accommodate people operating from ego, seeking external validation, motivated by survival and status. Jung called this collective consciousness, the average level of awareness that society is organized to support. The systems, structures, values, all calibrated for unconscious participation. Before awakening, you fit within society's container. You wanted what it offered. You were motivated by what it rewarded. The container was sufficient, but through your inner work, you've grown. Not better than, just grown beyond what the container can hold. You've developed needs society doesn't recognize. You've discovered values it doesn't reward. You've accessed dimensions of experience it has no framework for. Think of society like a greenhouse designed for plants that grow to a specific height. The greenhouse is perfectly designed for those plants. Proper spacing, right temperature, adequate light. Plants that stay within the designed height thrive within the structure. Then you start growing beyond the greenhouse's capacity. Your branches hit the ceiling. Your roots spread beyond the designated space. You need more room to expand than the structure provides. The greenhouse isn't wrong. It's perfect for plants that fit within its design. But you've outgrown it. Your continued growth is pushing against its limits. You can feel the constraint, the compression, the way the structure that once protected you now restricts you. The only healthy option is to break through the ceiling or leave entirely. Staying means stunting your growth, bending yourself unnaturally to fit a space too small for what you've become. That's not the greenhouse failing you. That's you needing something it was never designed to provide. Every time you try to force yourself back into the greenhouse, you feel the restriction immediately. Your branches scrape against the glass. Your roots hit artificial boundaries. The space that once felt like home now feels like a cage. And no amount of willpower can make you smaller again. Growth doesn't reverse. Consciousness doesn't contract. You can try to fit back in. You can bend your branches, prune your growth, compress yourself. But the cost is immense, and it never lasts. Your authentic size keeps reasserting itself. Your true shape keeps trying to emerge. And eventually, you have to choose. Keep trying to fit where you no longer belong, or accept that you've outgrown this space and need to find or create a larger one. This is the fifth reason. You've outgrown what society can contain. And when you outgrow the container, leaving isn't failure. It's the only way to keep growing. Society served you for a stage, but you've grown beyond that stage. If you've recognized yourself in these 5 truths, please understand. Your quiet departure from society isn't evidence that something's wrong with you. It's evidence that you've awakened to something most people remain unconscious of. You're leaving society behind because you can't perform unconsciously, and society requires unconscious performance. Societal success feels hollow, and you can't chase rewards you recognize as empty. You can't maintain collective illusions, and groups require shared blindness. You're called toward deeper work, and individuation demands withdrawal. You've outgrown the container, and society can't hold your expanded consciousness. This withdrawal isn't depression, isn't cynicism, isn't failure to adapt. Jung called this the price of consciousness, the natural isolation that accompanies awakening. It's the natural consequence of becoming conscious in structures built for unconsciousness, whole in systems designed for fragmentation, authentic in spaces that reward performance. Jung never promised that awakening would make you more successful at conventional life. He promised it would make you more authentic. And authenticity, for truly awakened people, often means living on the margins of society rather than within its center. If you're quietly leaving society behind, I want you to hear this. You're not failing at life. You're succeeding at consciousness. And consciousness, by its nature, creates distance from collective unconsciousness. You're withdrawing because you can't perform roles you see through, can't chase success you recognize as hollow, can't maintain illusions you've become conscious of, can't ignore a calling toward depth that demands your attention, can't compress yourself into containers you've outgrown. This withdrawal will be judged. People will call you antisocial, depressed, disconnected. They'll tell you to rejoin life, not understanding that you're finally joining your actual life for the first time. Society will pressure you to return, to participate, to care about what you're supposed to care about. But you can't return to unconscious participation. You can't unknow what you know, can't unsee what you've seen. So instead of apologizing for your departure, honor it. You're not leaving society behind out of judgment or superiority. You're leaving because you've grown beyond what it can contain. You're being called toward work that requires withdrawal. You're choosing authenticity over performance, depth over approval, your soul's life over society's demands. This is the path of individuation. It's walked on the margins, not in the center. It's lonely, often judged, rarely understood. But it's also the only path toward becoming who you actually are, rather than who society needs you to be. You're not failing. You're finally succeeding at the one thing that actually matters. If this explained your quiet departure, subscribe for Jungian psychology that honors the path of individuation over social conformity. Click the recommended video now for more insights into living authentically on the margins. Remember, leaving society behind isn't failure. It's consciousness choosing authenticity over performance. And that choice, however lonely, is the bravest one you can make.